of October. I'm Councillor Gillian Campbell and I'll be chairing today's meeting. The meeting is being broadcast live and I remind everybody to switch off your phones and devices so we don't have any interruptions. And I also remind you to keep your microphones switched off at all times until invited to speak, and if invited to speak, switch it on and introduce yourselves. Now we will introduce the several officers present who will be presenting the applications. Start with Kirsty.
Kirsty Charlton, Committee Services.
Neil Carter, I'm the solicitor to the committee.
Stephen Reid, I'm the planning manager, Chair.
Callum Harvey, Senior Planning Officer.
Louisa Olivier, Senior Planning Officer.
And Graham Blakey, Principal Planning Officer.
Thank you very much. We'll now start the meeting. Do I have any apologies for absence?
No, Chair.
So we can now move on to, are there any declarations of interest? No? Thank you. The minutes were held on for the meeting of the 1st of October. Can we approve these? Do I have a proposer and seconder? Councillor Bellingham and Councillor Shulman. Thank you. And we can now move on to the main business. We have two applications to be determined today. And we'll start with the first one at Wheatley Hill, I think. Callum?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So the first application up today is the application for 137 dwellings and associated infrastructure at land northwest of Quilstyle Road at Wheatley Hill. So just a couple of quick updates before the main presentation. Following the publication of the officer report, we have received site plan drawings to reflect a very minor tweak in the proposed house types. The change is a result of changing one plot from one type of two-bed to another type of two-bed dwelling. The change is very minor, though it requires 4 of the drawings listed under condition 2 to be updated. The second update, we've received a late objection from a neighbouring resident following the publication of the officer report. They raised concerns relating to highway safety, school capacity, GP capacity, public open spaces and biodiversity. They also raised concerns that the County Council own part of the application site, and they raised concerns that brownfield land is not being prioritised over greenfield sites. So just getting into the main presentation, the first slide shows the location of the site in the context of Wheatley Hill. So we've got the settlement to the south and Thornley off to the north. Next slide shows the site in greater detail. So we've got allotments to the west and east and an adjacent parcel of land to the north, which is subject to a separate proposal for a woodland plantation. Next slide shows some site photographs. This is taken from Quilstyle Road to the south, where the proposed access would be. Next slide shows the view from the southwest corner of the site, looking northeast across the site. And next slide shows the photographs from the northeast corner, looking back up the hill into the centre of the site. So we've got the existing dwellings there on the crest of the ridge. And the next slide shows the site when seen from the highway coming down from Thornley to the north. So the application site is roughly in the mid-ground, just before you get to the dwellings on the crest of the ridge. And then between the application site and the pylon in the foreground is the field subject to the separate proposal for the woodland plantation. So this is the proposed site plan. So access would be sought from Quilstyle Road to the southwest, and the layout focuses on a main circular route and an east-west drag running through the centre of the site. To the northeast we have a footpath connection and some public open space, including the children's play area. So this slide shows the provision of 14 affordable homes, 7 of which would be discount market sale and 7 of which would be affordable rent. So these are the proposed house types, which would be constructed in brick and grey concrete roof tile. So in terms of the consultations and representations, we've had 21 letters of objection, plus the late representation received just before the weekend, so that's 22, and the concerns are all covered in the report. We've got no objections from consultees, subject to recommended conditions where relevant, and the NHS and the education team recommend that financial contributions be sought through a legal agreement, should permission be granted. So the key issue that keeps coming up time and time again, if members were minded to grant plan permission, officers would seek the following in financial contributions to mitigate the impacts of this development. So we'd be seeking a contribution towards schools, towards GP surgery capacity and public open spaces. So it's just over £1 million in total. So members may recall this application. It was brought to committee back in September, and it was deferred following a number of questions raised by members in relation to how the secondary school contribution would be spent. So just as a reminder for members, the amount being sought is set out on the presentation slide there, underlined, and this would be going towards increasing capacity at Wellfield School. So since the September committee meeting, officers have liaised with the governors of Wellfield School, which forms part of the new College Durham Academies Trust. Wellfield School have confirmed that there will be there are capacity concerns as a result of this proposal, and they advise that further finance is required to enable expansion works at that school. They advise that with some internal remodelling, classroom construction and the redevelopment of playing fields, the school would be able to increase its capacity to provide an additional 89 school places. The contribution being sought from this development would pay toward the majority of that cost, whilst the remaining amount would be funded via the Academy Trust's Schools Capital Allocation. Following that response from Wellfield School, officers consider it appropriate to bring the application back before members for consideration. And then just a further update, following the September committee meeting, the applicant has also taken the opportunity, following the deferral, to provide further information to address some of the previously recommended conditions. An updated dust management plan and construction management plan have both been received to address comments from environmental health, and these documents are acceptable. Conditions 5 and 6 have therefore been updated to require compliance with these documents, should permission be granted. So just to quickly summarise the main points, Chair. In terms of the principle of development, so the application site is within the open countryside. It's currently used as an agricultural field and it's not allocated for development in the County Durham plan. However, the site is well related to the settlement and it is in a sustainable location, which are key matters under Policy 6. The proposal will deliver 137 homes, including 14 affordable dwellings and a further 14 bungalows, and these would help address the identified needs in County Durham. So turning first to the harms, we do have some harm to the visual amenity of the landscape at a local level. We do have an increase in traffic on the local road network, and we do have the loss of a well-established hedgerow along Quillstyle Road, which is of some amenity value at a local level. However, the degree of weight afforded to each of these harms is considered limited. In terms of the benefits, apologies Chair, I keep skipping ahead. In terms of the benefits, we have delivery of new housing, including affordable dwellings and bungalows. We have the economic benefits during construction and from the increased footfall for local businesses once the dwellings are occupied. And we also have the delivery of a biodiversity net gain. So just to conclude, this application was submitted last year following favourable pre-app advice from officers, and the applicant has worked with officers to overcome some initial concerns regarding the layout, the impact on trees, and securing drainage features across the site. Following the usual balancing act for housing developments of this scale, officers consider the proposal to be acceptable. In this instance, the identified benefits lead to a clear positive outcome in the wider planning balance. Officers therefore recommend that members approve this application, subject to entering into a legal agreement with the applicant, as summarised at the bottom of the officer report, and subject to conditions listed at the bottom of the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Callum. Now we turn to the speakers. On my list, I've just got one person recorded to speak, Mr. Chris Dodds for Gleeson's Homes. Chris, you have 5 minutes to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. To be honest, I don't propose to make a speech. It was just to say that, obviously, I am Chris Dodds. I'm Land Director at Gleeson, and obviously available should there be any queries or questions as a result of the application. And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's nothing really to respond to at this point, so I'll open the matter to members for questions. Councillor Bellingham.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Bellingham, Horden and Dean House. I just really want it on record, and I do read the papers, and I appreciate on the presentation that we talked about the highway, and that has been raised before, and it was raised at the previous meeting. The concerns again are to the amount of traffic meeting the 181, which is a main route between the East Coast and Durham City. I would just like, I know we have no highways officers here today, but I would just like some consideration really with regards to the amount of traffic. It's bad to get on that road anyway now, but the amount of traffic that then will be joining that 181. And I noticed it said the harm is considered limited with regards to that highway. I just wanted on record really that maybe sometime in the future that could be looked at if it becomes a problem. Thank you.
Thank you for making that interesting point, Councillor Bellingham. I think Mr. Reid will deal with it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and just in response to Councillor Bellingham's point there, following the deferral at the September Planning Committee, myself and Dave Lewin, the Council's acting head of highways, did have a meeting with a local member who, you'll recall, Chair, had raised the similar concerns when the planning application was up last time. I think the long and short of it is, I think in terms of this planning application, as Callum has set out in the report, the amount of increased traffic arising from the scheme would not be sufficient to justify any improvements on the junction, but certainly highways officers are cognizant of the issues there, and there is some level of delay at present, and I think there is a commitment to keep that junction under review as we move forward and we look at future housing developments, and indeed as part of any future work we do as part of the local transport plan. So I think, I think the objections or the comments have been well received in the highways team, and there is a commitment to keep that under review, Chair, as we move forward, but not something I think we could probably pin on this planning application.
Thank you, Steve. Councillor Hope.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Kenny Hope, Dulsley District. The points raised in the last meeting for this that led to the deferral have been satisfactorily answered, and resolution has been put in there. Therefore, I support the officer's decision to approve this application and moving this to be approved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Stevenson. Thank you. So we can move the matter to vote. Councillor Wilkes, you've got further comment?
Yeah, it's just to reiterate the comment I made last time. Whilst I appreciate other members on the committee may disagree, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to support an application which is in breach of our supplementary parking planning document to this extent, so I'll be voting against this.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkes. We can now move to a vote. All those in favour of the application? That's 10 in support and against 1. Thank you. The application is approved. closes that application, so if anybody wishes now to leave, you feel free to do so. We're now going to deal with the second application.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. So this is an application for the erection of 79 residential dwellings with associated access, landscaping and infrastructure on land north and east of Pelton House Farm, Station Lane. So before I go into my presentation, I do have some updates for committee. So since the report was published, we've had revised drainage plans and a revised landscape plan. So the ones detailed here need to replace the ones detailed in condition 2 of the report. And as the drainage engineers want the drainage plans packaged into the flood risk and drainage strategy, we advise an additional condition to require an updated FRA and drainage strategy as worded here. Another update is in respect of BNG. The report refers to BNG of 20.59%, but this was based on an earlier plan, and the latest plan with the off-site BNG and amendments to landscaping details a minimum of 10%, but the final figure will be confirmed at condition discharge stage, but it will be more than 10%. We've also had a further 5 objections from local residents, mostly raising the same issues as covered in the report, but also raising concerns about preparatory works and advertising relating to the development having started, which we would always advise against. And in relation to sewage connections, which is a matter between the developer and NWL to resolve, and in respect of other sites being available. So in response to that matter, we would advise that we can only consider the site in front of us. Okay, so this slide shows the red line location for the housing and the larger block to the north there, and the red line for the off-site BNG in fields adjacent to the C2C cycle route. This slide shows the site in more detail. The site comprises approximately 4.25 hectares of greenfield land located to the north and east of Pelton House Farm Estate, which is a single row of isolated roadside dwellings that lie to the south of the settlement of Pelton. The site is bounded by Station Lane and the residential properties of Harelaw cul-de-sac to the west, with the Sustrans National Cycle Network beyond Station Lane. Pelton House Farm housing and further agricultural land is to the south, and the housing of the Wind Estate, a public right-of-way and a designated area of open space with a fixed play area, is to the east, and Pelton House Farm is to the north. So we've got 2 bus stops located within 400 metres of the site boundary along Station Lane to the south, and that's indicated by the yellow circles. And further bus stops are located on Front Street to the north. So the bus stops have regular services that allow for journeys to Newcastle, Chesley Street and Sunderland 7 days per week. The site is connected to Pelton area by foot with existing pedestrian pathways adjacent Station Lane. A public right-of-way extends across the site, providing access to a range of other public rights-of-way. There's a number of facilities and services available within 10 minutes walking distance from the site, and others are only slightly beyond this. So I've highlighted the services in Pelton with the red arrows. You can see there's a reasonable range to meet the day-to-day needs. In terms of constraints, the site includes overland flow routes, which combine in the middle of the site to create an area at high risk of surface water flooding, although the site is more generally in flood zone 1, which is a zone of at least flood risk. This is an aerial photo of the site. The land incorporates a paddock with a menage to the northeast corner of the site, with the rest of the site currently used as agricultural land for pasturing, grazing and keeping of horses. It's presently accessed via the Pelton House farm entrance. The land is bounded and subdivided by fences. The topography is gently rolling, falling generally to the south and to the east. The site is not covered by any national or local landscape designations. The Tree Preservation Order, Chesley Street 25, is located adjacent to the site, and that details trees within the rear gardens of Harelow Close. There are no mature landscape features of note within the site. So this photo is taken from Station Lane, looking east across the site towards the Wynd. You can see the low stone wall here that's to be removed as part of the proposals. This is again taken from Station Lane, looking southeast, showing the openness of the site. This is showing the site from Station Lane, looking northeast on the approach into Pelton. And this photo shows the position of the public right-of-way that runs within the south of the site and adjacent to the current housing, and which would be retained but upgraded. So these two photographs show the footway into Pelton from the site, and you can see the speed measures that are in place on Station Lane. I think they were put in around about 2022. This photograph shows the approximate location of the new access into the site. And this is the position of the new pedestrian access taken through the Wynd, and that's to the left-hand side of that tree when looking directly at the picture. So this is the proposed plan for the 79 homes. The residential developable area of the site extends to all parts except the areas south of the public right-of-way that would become public open space. From the single new access junction from Station Lane, the roadway would branch off to a further roadway north and south, with cul-de-sacs branching off from that. Along the western boundary, properties would face onto Station Lane with shared driveways in front. Properties would also face onto the proposed open space to the south and the existing open space to the east. Other housing would back onto current or proposed neighbouring residential properties. The proposed layout includes the provision of tree-lined streets, accessible open space, a variety of drainage features, including swales. The proposal includes 8,170 square metres of green space, including a large area of open space to the south, with a suds basin and vegetation planting. The existing public right-of-way adjacent to the open space will be upgraded, both within the site and outside of the site, until it reaches the Wynd housing estate. A total of 221 parking spaces are proposed on site, and this includes 159 driveway spaces, 8 detached garages, 34 integral garages, and 20 dedicated visitor spaces. Each dwelling would also have one EV charging point and 2 cycle parking spaces. This plan shows in more detail plans for the public right-of-way, upgraded both within the site and outside of the site until it reaches the Wynd housing estate. These works would be delivered by the developer under condition. These are the proposed elevations showing the housing mix, which would comprise 2-bedroom bungalows, 2-bedroom semi or terraced houses, 3-bedroom semis or detached houses, and 4-bedroom detached houses. The applicant has offered to provide 15% on-site affordable housing, which equates to 12 dwellings. The materials proposed are red brick with artstone sills. Whilst the drawings here indicate red roof tiles, the developers have actually agreed to use grey roof tiles instead, in line with the advice of our design colleagues, and that has been made subject of condition. So turning to consultee responses, in respect of statutory consultee responses, Pelton Parish Council have objected to the application due to the impact on highway and road safety, the impact on amenity and coalescence with Pelton Fell. The Highways Authority support the application subject to further pedestrian access being proposed through the Wynd, and that is what is now being proposed. The LLFA requests an updated FRA and drainage strategy to include all approved drainage plans in detail, and this can be made subject of condition. And there have been no objections from any other statutory consultees. Turning to internal consultee responses, the Public Right-of-Way Officer is generally supportive but highlights some privacy issues for Plot 52, given its position adjacent to the footpath. The Affordable Housing Officer requests further details of types of product to be used and the level of discount. The Design and Conservation Officer requests the use of grey roofs, which is now being proposed. The Landscape Officer considers the landscape not of high value or sensitivity. Nonetheless, they consider the landscape effects at site level and in relation to its immediate surroundings to be transformative to the character of the existing edge of the settlement. The effects on the wider landscape are considered to be low. The visual effects experienced on and adjacent to the site would not exceed moderate and adverse overall, with the potential to reduce and improve in the longer term on the establishment of the proposed landscape planting. The officer suggests the harm to be weighed in the planning balance. The trees officer considers protected trees are suitably protected from construction but may have pressure for removal in the future due to close proximity nuisance. Active travel requests further detail in respect of the quality of walking routes, junction, the suitability of layout, the connection to the public right of the wind and cycle storage, and most details have now been submitted in relation to that. All other internal consultees have no objections or no objections subject to contribution, conditions or informatives. In respect of external consultee responses, there have been no objections or no objections subject to contribution. In respect of public responses, there were previously 106, that's now 111 letters of objection from local residents and the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England, whose concerns in the main are summarised around the principle of development and the lack of need, landscape and character impacts, the potential for flooding and drainage issues, harm to residential amenity, impacts to local infrastructure, harm to ecology and wildlife, conflict with policy, and all of the points are fully detailed in the report. So we've had a response from Luke Akehurst MP. He objects to the application as the site is not allocated in the County Durham plan in terms of highway safety, as the site would lead to coalescence with Pelton Fell, the disregard shown to local residents by advertising the housing before any permission is in place, and as a parish council have objected to the application. In summary of the key points, this is an unallocated site in the open countryside. However, it is a reasonably sustainable location, which is well related to the settlement of Pelton. The provision of new housing carries a substantial positive weight, and the affordable housing aspect a higher significant positive weight. The proposal would have a transformative impact upon the landscape. The adverse effects are considered of moderate significance and above. There's a resultant policy conflict with Part C and D of Policy 6, Policy 29 and Policy 39 in respect of the landscape harm of the proposed development. This harm shall be attributed limited negative weight in the plan balance. The harm would also reduce over time once landscaping is established. There would also be some conflict with Policy 40 of the County Durham plan in respect of poor integration with existing trees, and this carries little negative weight. The proposal brings environmental benefits in respect of BNG above policy requirements and other economic, social and environmental benefits associated with any new housing. All other issues are neutral, or the proposal has met policy requirements or mitigated its own impacts. So to conclude, the benefits put forward by the application will demonstrably outweigh the harm arising from the identified policy conflict, and this is a material consideration to indicate that the plan should not be followed, and therefore approval is recommended, subject to conditions under Section 106 agreement as outlined within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa. We have several people here to speak in connection with this application. Firstly, I have Councillor Danny Wood from Pelton Parish Council. Councillor Wood, I remind you that you have unlimited time, but convention in these proceedings, try and limit to 5 minutes if you can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. As you've explained, I'm here on behalf of Pelton Parish Council. Can I just start by saying that I think it's a real shame that we're here today objecting to a planning application. The last time I spoke in this room, it was in favour of a planning application, and it's only through the lack of engagement and the refusal to listen to our community that we're here today. We've heard references in the committee report to the development of a neighbourhood plan, and the report's keen to stress that at this stage it doesn't carry any weight. And I'd ask members to consider why a community such as Pelton felt the need to establish a neighbourhood plan area, and the answer's in front of you and is the basis of this planning application today. The developer did hold a consultation event at the Buffs. They don't appear to have listened to anything residents told them. They insisted we have more than double the community facilities we have in our village, and of course that everything would be wonderful. Realistically, this isn't a planning application that began in our community. It's been cooking away in County Hull somewhere by a group of people who don't know or understand our community. And no offence to Louisa, but we've heard several references to the wind today. I know where the wind is, but I've never heard of the wind. So why are we here today? The committee report does correctly identify at paragraph 72 that policy 6 and policy 10 of the County Durham plan are vital to the determination before you today, because it's not a site allocated for development. I also note that we heard in the conclusion from the planning officer that the benefits, the identified policy conflicts are outweighed by the benefits. And part of what we're raising is we don't think all of the policy conflicts have been looked at, certainly not in the context of the report that's set on the planning portal. The applicant at paragraph 126 of the report agrees that the only relevant policy is policy 6, and having read it several times, I'm concerned and disappointed that consideration of policy 6 seems to have been completely overlooked when the report was prepared. Coalescence is the merging of separate towns or villages into a single unified settlement. This process typically happens as a result of new development occurring on undeveloped land between existing communities, which can lead to a physical and visual fusion. It's often a key concern of planning policy as it can threaten the distinct identity and character of individual settlements. Coalescence is not just about buildings running into one another, but also about losing the sense of separation that exists between settlements. I would further argue that the sense of separation in this instance is particularly important to the rural nature of Station Lane and the outlying parts of Pelton Fell. Would it be possible to show the first photograph, please? So this just shows looking north from Station Lane towards the site and where the site entrance will be. And in the back you can see Hello Close, and at the back to the right you can see the Wind. You'll also notice there's what appears to be a street sign towards the centre of the photo. At paragraph 135 of the report, the officer states there's no coalescence between Pelton and Pelton Fell, as the only coalescence is between Pelton and Pelton House Farm Estate. Again, we feel like the officers have completely missed the point here. Pelton House Farm Estate has always been a Pelton Fell address. It may not line up with ward boundaries or statistical boundaries, but what community does? And it's not just Royal Mail or HM Land Registry that say so either. There's another significant body that we should listen to, and whose determination I believe the committee should provide significant weight to in determining this planning application. Can we show the second photograph, please? It hasn't come out great on there, but what we're looking at is a Durham County Council blue and yellow sign with the words Pelton Fell on it, and you can see in the background towards the right of the photo is number 1 Pelton House Farm Estate. So this clearly denotes the beginning of Pelton Fell as you travel south along Station Lane before you even reach Pelton House Farm Estate. And the committee today are being asked by planning officers to approve a planning application on the basis that it doesn't result in coalescence between settlements, when approval would literally result in houses being built around the council's own Pelton Fell sign. What kind of message does this send to our residents? We mentioned the infrastructure, Northern Gas Works, that began on the site in September to install new gas main in these fields for 79 new properties. When concerns were raised about this through the local Member of Parliament, work was put on hold. But it begs the question, how is it that a private developer can orchestrate the installation of infrastructure like this before elected county councillors on this committee have considered or made a determination on a planning application? In terms of water, I don't think you're allowed to do that, Alex. Northumbrian Water had said in the report that there's insufficient detail, and I know that we've had some further updates from them. In terms of what we'd heard from residents, there's real concern about the fact that this proposal sees the new houses being raised to avoid flooding, but as part of the impact, the wall at the front's removed and the bridleway itself is going to be levelled out, and residents on the Wynd are concerned that that will make their houses more prone to flooding, as they're going to be lower down than the new houses when it's built. And the sort of recommendation to approve this comes with no assurances or measures to protect existing properties from flooding, just a promise that will be looked at later. I would also like to explain why this location is so controversial in our community. Station Lane has been a cause for concern for many years. It's been the location of numerous accidents, and the lane has increasingly become a rat run, exacerbated by the amount of housing development in the wider area. This is also an important consideration for Policy 6 Part E, which requires the development to not be prejudicial to highway safety or have a severe cumulative impact on network capacity. North of the railway bridge, Station Lane narrows to 5.1 metres, with 5.5 metres being the minimum legal width for a rural two-way road. The requirement is increased to 6 metres for occasional use by lorries and up to 6.8 metres for regular use by heavy goods vehicles. By the time you reach the northern entrance to Bernard Terrace, the road is narrowed further to 4.9 metres, and at the north end of Pelton House Farm Estate, the road is now just 4.8 metres wide. I haven't measured these myself, but all of these measurements come from a 2019 report by Durham County Council's Traffic Assets Team, Road Safety Review of Station Lane, which also found in part 6.6.2, in case anyone wants to look it up afterwards. The Traffic Signs Manual recommends that where the road is less than 5.5 metres wide, the centre line should be omitted. This would mean removing the centre line from the road between the disused railway bridge and the bend before Hello Close. For clarity, this includes the section of the road where the proposed site access would be. This shows that the road itself is not up to standard for further development, and yet there's a shocking lack of consideration of this in the committee report. Highways were mentioned earlier in relation to the first application as an ongoing concern and something that the committee members have asked the council to look into and be aware of problems developing. And a large part of what we're saying today is we're not just worried about future problems, they're problems now, but the more houses that are built on there, the greater those problems are going to become. Paragraph 97 of the report also shows concerns of the council's active travel officer, who highlights that the roads in the development are not wide enough to meet the requirements of the policy. I don't think that made it through into the presentation, but it does say that the officer notes that the internal road layout and the road width in all instances falls within the range where there's a lack of a safety margin that allows vehicles to safely pass. The same officer goes on to state in the report, as some key facilities fall outside of the established 800-metre threshold, the officer advises that it should be demonstrated that the footway along key routes have a minimum width of 2 metres and a step-free, have a smooth, even surface, seating at regular intervals, uncluttered, have natural lines of sight, street lighting, wayfinding and crossing points suitable for the speed and volume of traffic along each route. I had written, it doesn't do that because the footpath link, and I appreciate that the officers confirmed that there is going to be a footpath link, but that's not the only issue with it, because the footpaths along Station Lane itself to get to the bus stops that were highlighted on the map are nowhere near 2 metres, and I don't think they're step-free, but it all seems to have had no impact on the officer's recommendation for this to be approved today. So this application would join up Pelton with the nearest properties in Pelton Fell, filling in the gap by removing the separation between these settlements. The road used for access is too narrow under national requirements and under our local policy. The internal roads are not wide enough, and the proposed development does not link in, and provide safe access to local facilities as we require them to under the County Durham Plan, all the while increasing flood risk for our existing residents. We want sustainable development that provides a wider benefit to our local community. For us, this will require ensuring that access is not just about considering the width of a single junction, which the applicant had already been forced to change, by the way. Why aren't we making bringing Station Lane up to an acceptable standard a requirement for any development to take place here? No amount of Section 106 applications can offset the impact that this development would have on Station Lane. There are alternative sites in the area where development could go ahead, and I would point out that Pelton Parish Council is not against all housing development. Nearby developments at Trinity Green and Rosebery School site were not objected to, and neither were Lonin Gardens. But there are serious concerns about the impact of these proposals on Station Lane and on our residents. These proposals would exacerbate significant highways issues on Station Lane and result in coalescence between Pelton and Pelton Fell. And for the reasons I've outlined, Pelton Parish Council object to this application and respectfully request that the committee refuses this application on the grounds that it does not conform with the requirements of Policy 6 of the County Durham Plan due to coalescence and the impact on Station Lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. I think I have members from the division in the chamber. Do you want to speak? No, no further comment. Thank you. I now have a Mr. Jeff Rose who wants to object to the application. Mr. Rose, I remind you, you've got 5 minutes, and Kirsty will let you know 1 minute before that time is up.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, I'm Jeff Rose. I've lived at Pelton Fell for over 10 years at Pelton House Farm Estate. I'm speaking today on behalf of the residents of Pelton House Farm Estate, Station Lane and surrounding areas to share our deep concerns about the impact that the proposed Bellway housing development and its construction work will have on our community. These are as follows. Inadequacy of Station Lane to handle increased traffic from the development, especially from construction vehicles. Impact on existing infrastructure. Concerns include existing road safety issues like vehicles mounting the footway and speeding, as well as the potential for increased congestion on nearby junctions and roundabouts. Risk to vulnerable road users. Risk to horse riders, cyclists and dog walkers who use the rural lane. Road suitability. Station Lane, in our opinion, is unsuitable for the increase in traffic, including construction vehicles that will result from a large-scale development. The lane is narrow, undulating and often forces vehicles to mount the footway to pass each other. Bridge safety. Concerns about a specific bridge on the route that is thought to be unsuitable for heavy goods vehicles. This bridge is located at the southeastern end of Station Lane. It is a blind bend and long vehicles will need to cross into the oncoming lane to negotiate this bend, causing a considerable hazard for other road users. Road collisions. Traffic reports as detailed in the DCC committee report are inaccurate and did not include details of multiple collisions in the area, which highlight the existing safety problems. Accidents are not always reported, as these incidents involved only one car, where they'd left the road and gone through a wall or fence. I've provided photos on this slide, which you can view. If other cars are involved, details are exchanged and settled between both parties. Cars also frequently hit the curb whilst travelling at speed. Vans often have their wing mirrors over the edge of the footway due to the narrowness of the lane, putting pedestrians in danger. Further delivery vehicles will add to this danger. There was a fatal accident several years ago when a pedestrian was run over beside the bus stop on Station Lane. This highlights just how dangerous this lane can be. Limited visibility. There is poor visibility for drivers exiting Station Lane on the front street at the Pelton end. A problem exacerbated by a high wall which would be made worse by the development. Additionally, there is a blind bend on the approach to Bernard Terrace and Charles Terrace, which presents a danger when exiting here onto Station Lane. Safety for vulnerable road users. The proposal would pose an increased risk to cyclists, horse riders and dog walkers who use the rural lane. HGVs and large vehicles. Road width. Station Lane is only 4.8 metres in some places. I've measured this myself at the weekend. When two large vehicles try to pass each other, one of them frequently mounts their footway to get past, which puts pedestrians at risk. Durham County Council guidelines suggest for occasional HGV use, a minimum of 6 metres is required on rural lanes. For regular HGV use and bus use, a minimum of 6.8 metres is required for roads where HGVs or buses are likely to pass each other regularly. Smaller buses are used on Station Lane and they still have difficulty passing cars. The proposed development would generate increased HGV traffic on Station Lane. In conclusion, residents, some of whom have lived on Station Lane for more than 50 years, are extremely concerned that this proposed development will bring disruption in the form of safety, noise, vibrations, dust and pollution, which will undoubtedly create a state of unrest. We're not against new housing or development. However, Pelton Fell and the surrounding areas have seen
1 minute remaining.
I've seen several new large developments recently being built. Station Lane nor the surrounding area cannot cope with the increase of traffic and disruption, either from the construction phase or from the vehicles owned by any new residents from the proposed development. The existing infrastructure simply isn't suitable, and the well-being of residents must come first. We urge Durham County Council to take our concerns seriously and to make the right decision, putting residents' safety and welfare above all. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Right, now we have a speaker for the applicant. Mr. Waugh, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name's Dominic Woff. I'm a planning consultant at Pegasus Group, and I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, Bellway Homes Durham, in relation to the proposed development. Firstly, I'd like to endorse the committee report prepared by your officers and the conclusions drawn that the application should be approved. The applicants work positively with officers on this scheme to ensure that the proposals promote good design and sustainability, and we thank officers for proactively engaging with the applicant in relation to the proposed development. The scheme provides 79 new family homes comprising a wide mix of 2 to 4 bedroom properties, both market and affordable homes, including 12 affordable properties and 9 bungalows. The scheme will increase housing choice by providing a number of sizes and house types which will suitably meet the needs of local people in an area where they want to live. This diverse range of housing options will provide homes for families as well as individuals on lower incomes in County Durham and older people in the local community. A sustainability statement has been submitted as part of the application, which highlights that energy efficiency can be achieved through a robust energy specification in compliance with building regulations. The homes will therefore be built to modern standards to keep running costs low for future occupiers. The applicant is proactively engaged with officers, including pre-application inquiries during this application process, to take on board feedback and address matters to bring forward a high-quality housing development. Public consultation has been undertaken by the applicant to engage with the local community and ward and parish councillors. This included leaflets across the settlement of Pelton and hosting a public consultation event in which councillors and members of the public were invited to attend and comment on the proposal. The application was subject to a recent design review that received a positive score and feedback from the panel which demonstrates acceptability of the design of the scheme. The highways access is to be upgraded in accordance with the Council's highway requirements, and the Council's Highway Development Management Team confirms that the impact of the proposed development can be accommodated on the surrounding highway network both during construction and when the development is occupied. The proposed development is sustainably located in a highly accessible location which is well related to the existing settlement of Pelton. It's got access to bus services running along Station Lane and the coast-to-coast cycle route. In addition, as officers have highlighted, there's an agreed upgrade to the public right-of-way outside of the site and connecting to the Wind to provide a convenient and sustainable pedestrian connection to Pelton Centre. A construction management plan and delivery logistics plan have been submitted and considered by the Highway Authority as part of this planning application. Bellway Homes are dedicated to delivering high-quality new homes and are recognised as a 5-star house builder by the Home Builders Federation. They are a public limited company with their headquarters located in the North East and a specific Durham division. Bellway Homes have a focus on employing local people directly in the supply chain and support the local economy and benefiting local people. Bellway Homes also operate an apprenticeship programme which results in a nationally recognised qualification where apprentices are registered with a local college or training provider. The proposed development will also create household expenditure and contribution to council tax as a result of the residents in the new dwellings. These local economic benefits will cascade down the supply chain through direct and indirect effects during the construction phase. Social and environmental benefits will also be generated from the proposed development, such as increasing housing choice to suit local needs in the local area, in addition to providing numerous open green spaces, tree planting and landscape features. The Council's officers have presented a committee report to members setting out that the scheme should be approved, subject to condition and a Section 106 agreement. As such, we ask that this planning application is approved by members. I'm joined by Mark Gabriel from Bellway Homes, and we would be happy to answer any questions you may have about the proposed development.
Thank you very much. Kirsty, do you want to address some of the points raised?
Thank you. There's quite a lot there, so I might not capture everything, but I'll try. Okay, so firstly, the Pelton Neighbourhood Plan. I appreciate it maybe, the site might be at the limits of the settlement as planned for the Pelton Neighbourhood Plan. But according to our records, it's only at stage 1, and you need to actually run through 7 stages until it's adopted. So we can't take it into account as a development plan until it reaches that 7th stage. In terms of drainage, the drainage scheme has been designed to ensure that the central area drains within the internal land to the south. So it's designed to sort of capture any runoff from that road, Station Lane, into the site, which will then flow into the Suds Basin at the south of the site. That's the lowest point, and there's also swales within the site as well. The changes in the levels are minor. They're designed to ensure that there would not be a flow out to the properties to the east, but designed to flow back into the site itself. And yes, some of the properties have been raised by 150 millimetres to make sure that they're not at any flood risk from those changes in those levels. So the finished levels details would not indicate a greater risk of flooding to neighbouring land. In terms of sort of foul water, NWL haven't objected to this application and they have recommended a condition. In terms of sort of the comments regarding active travel, about pathways not being 2 metres. So yes, ideally in the future what we're looking for is a 2 metre wide pathway. For instance, if we had a new town coming forward, it would be so much more easier to design schemes in that manner. But in situations like this where you're retrofitting a site into an existing area with existing rural footways, it's a lot more difficult. It's not always going to be possible to widen the footway adjacent to narrow lanes such as Station Lane without causing sort of difficulties for the roadway itself. We had such a case in Lanchester that went to appeal, and the inspector found that the actual very narrow footway was acceptable to reach Lanchester from that housing site, so we have got a precedent there. In terms of coalescence, that's been raised by local residents and the MP. Policy 6 actually refers to coalescence with neighbouring settlements, so we have accepted in the report there will be some coalescence here with that row of housing, but that in itself isn't a settlement. I take on the point about the signage, but we look at sort of the visual built form rather than road markings and things like that. Okay, and in terms of sort of the narrow internal roads comment, they are actually 5.5 metres in width, which is acceptable in terms of DCC highway standards. I think those comments predated amended plans that came in, so they are actually an acceptable width internally. And turning to sort of wider highways matters, it's a bit unfortunate we don't have highways here today, but I do have some comments made from our highways officer. So he has pointed out that there hasn't been a single accident on Station Road according to our official stats. But it's official stats, yeah. And we have to take into account that Plan Policy Guidance Notes only requires developers to look at accidents from the past 3 years and in the immediate vicinity of the site access. And the access, a single accident wouldn't necessarily make a road safety issue. We've also got to point out as well that there has been speed cushions put down and it's now a 30-mile-per-hour road, and also the introduction of new housing within an area fronting onto a roadway does have a beneficial effect in actually naturally people slowing down because they feel like they are being watched, and it feels like you're coming into more of an urban area. And in terms of sort of the width of the road for the HGVs, it is a temporary situation. Yes, there are parts where it's 4.8 metres wide, but it varies to 6.9 metres wide. That's wide enough to be used as a bus route, which it is presently. So the highways officer hasn't objected to that. If there are concerns about that, then additional condition could be added to ensure that there's appropriate signage in place during construction to manage that. I think that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Louisa. I'll now throw this open to questions from the members. Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Chair. I have to be honest with you, I'm a bit disappointed that we have nobody from Highways here. We've got 19 different points of highway safety raised in the objections. We've got the active travel officer in the report, and I'd like to understand this part, because in the report it talks about the active travel officer saying that the internal roads layout does not fall within the range where there is a safety margin to pass. So is that no longer the case? Is that what you were saying before?
Louisa?
Yeah, it meets our 5.5 metre wide DCC highway standards.
But the comments from the active travel officer, were they before or after any changes?
Before.
Before, so those changes have been made. But we've got a parish council here, we've got residents here, we've got 19 points about highways objections, and yet we've got no highways officer here for us to question. I don't think that's satisfactory.
Please be quiet. Any further questions from members? I want to then throw this open to debate. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm very familiar with this site. Going back to when I was, in the district, the former Chester Street District Council, this site is, being talked about for many, many years. Unfortunately, unfortunately, it's always been sort of opposed at all levels for any development. Appreciate the policy changes as we go along, and as Louise is, there's a brilliant presentation there regarding, the distances for the local services and everything. She does that really well to say everything sort of falls within them, sort of walking distance, what have you. However, the big one what doesn't change is the coalitions, which has been highlighted from the objectors and also from the local parish council. That doesn't change whatsoever, and that's that's for all these decades this site has been bandied about. That's been the biggest one which always is pushed back from any development happening on this site. And for me, nothing's changed here. I think it's a purely related Policy 6 site. It might fit in certain parts, but it's not the strongest of Policy 6 sites. And the coalitions and the effect on the landscape harm. For me, I will not be supporting this application. Thank you, Chair.
Please be quiet. Let members speak. Any further questions or comments to make? Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Chair. A slightly different view to Councillor Bell in terms of coalescence. When I look at it, I'm not entirely convinced about the coalescence argument. But I do feel quite strongly about the highway safety issue. Because Policy 21 talks about development not having a severe safety or cumulative impact on the network, but also just generally on highway safety. And we're going to have a development here and no proper footpath to the width that we would want. And I appreciate what the officer has said, that you can have other applications that may have come forward, but we're looking at this particular site. I also know that road. It is a narrow road. People do go faster than they should on it. And actually those speed humps, when you see that picture that that Danny showed, it's actually the vehicles, the bigger vehicles, the SUVs, they just go straight over those speed humps because they don't impact them whatsoever. So they don't really have any proper impact on reducing the speeds along that road, other than somebody in a Honda Jazz or something like mine. So I'm not willing to support this either, but for me it's on the grounds of highway safety. I just don't think that the sufficient measures here have been put in place to make sure that the development isn't going to impact on highway safety. And I'm not entirely convinced about the internal layout of the site either.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkes. I think for myself, it is a shame the Highways Officer isn't here. These matters have largely been addressed in the report, but it would have helped to have additional information. However, it is not the only issue, and I really do feel that this is an opportunity to provide well-needed new housing, affordable housing, especially in the area and also for County Durham. There are many good points to this development, which it is always a balancing exercise, and I think it could outweigh the other issues that have been raised. the developer's going a long way to contributing towards improving the site, the area, and this must be taken into account as well when any decision is made. Councillor Woodhouse.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back on highways, yes, it'd be great if we did have someone from highways. I mean, in previous meetings, this has been brought up before by previous other councillors, but on these sort of cases, we should have someone from highways. So if we can make a note of that and try and get one in, especially with these. The thing is, what I'm hearing is a lot of things. I used to live in the close to the area, in one of the local villages. Now that road is predominantly accidents are caused that by the way people drive. We cannot, and most of the things what have been brought up today is mannerisms about people drive. Yes, we can put precautions in. Yes, we can do many things to try and slow them down, but we cannot change the attitude of that person behind that wheel each time. Most of the things what have been brought up today have been tried to be rectified by putting the 30-mile speed signs in there. They've put the speed bumps in there, which hopefully will, as colleagues have said before, new housing estates, that does slow down traffic. It is another speed caution. So unfortunately, highways isn't here, but what I see is that we can never, if we're going to look at most of the complaints, we've got to basically refuse everyone by the way they drive. And unfortunately, we can't control that side of things. So I think looking at everything what they've done to try and intermit this with the drainage and everything, I actually would like to put a case in and go with the officer's recommendation to approve the settlement.
Does anyone second that proposal? Councillor Bellingham, seconded. People would like to... Councillor Bell, you have something more to say?
Yes, Chair. I'll also like to move refusal on the application.
Thank you. Well, anybody second that? Councillor Will. Well, we'll vote on the refusal motion. Apologies, I've been corrected there. Vote on the approval motion first. All those in favour? Seven against? 3. That's approved. Thank you. This application has been accepted.
Whilst the meeting's still open, we could...
Members, before we leave, there's just one further point on the minutes. Having read through the minutes, noted a small amendment to be made on page 8. I've suggested deleting a word and adding 2 words instead. The word conflicting to be changed to conflicts with. I assume nobody is going to mind that amendment? So Councillor Shulman, Councillor Bell, no objections? No. Thank you. Meeting closed.